And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for joining us for our unique podcast community where we explore the triumphs and tragedies of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished artists. And thank you so much for helping us grow. We hit 2,011 subscribers this week, and we grow every day thanks to people like you who subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and share with friends and family. It means the world to us. This show is produced by my son Quentin Tramm and by me, Jason Tramm. I'm a conductor and a music professor and just a lover of music, and I just love to have these conversations with colleagues from many different parts of the music industry and musical world. So thank you for being here today. We have a wonderful show today. We have David Perrico, who is the award-winning Best of Las Vegas trumpeter, composer, producer, conductor, and pretty much all-around complete musician. He's the leader of the Pop Strings Orchestra, and we're going to talk about that. Currently in residence at the Smith Center for the Performing Arts in Las Vegas, and also the band in residence of the LA Raiders, in addition to many other things. So welcome, David, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Jason, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, you reached out to me on Instagram, and that was so cool. And it's just great to meet colleagues across the music industry, and you're doing such incredible work.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that's the real true great thing about the social media is that we can connect this way. And it was through Beethoven, through Jan Swafford, that I saw your video. I was like, man, I've got to send you a note and say how awesome that interview was.
Oh,
So
that meant the world to me, and Jan is a dear colleague, and what a musical mind, and his insight into those great composers. I was asking him, like, what would you ask Beethoven if you could have a beer with him? Like, he was so cool, and he's such a brilliant mind, and I was just, it's great to have these conversations, and to have you here too. I didn't realize you were such a humongous Beethoven file.
absolutely,
How could you not
absolutely.
be? I mean, one of the terrific minds, one of the great minds of Western culture for sure.
Yeah, there's many reasons why I am attracted to Beethoven. Mostly because of what he went through. He was a human. He wasn't this perfect person. He had a lot of struggle, and that's what I gravitate to is just when you think you had it bad or you have it bad, look what Beethoven had to deal with,
Yeah,
and it kind of
the idea that
grounded.
the greatest musician of his time could be losing his hearing, and and the devastation that caused him, and how he was able to take that and increase the narrative into music, like to put that into the storytelling, into the music, that changed music forever.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Jan Swafford, in the last documentary by BBC, being Beethoven, he made a comment saying that Beethoven had as much courage as any human being. And that was like, wow, that was awesome.
You read that Heiligenstadt Testament where he wrote to his brother, and
Yeah,
it's just heartbreaking. You're like, boy, this guy is just he's pouring his heart out there, and he was thinking about, he mentioned suicide. That was a consideration, and thankfully he was able to like find that strength, and we're all better off for it. It resounds down the centuries.
yeah, he was on the edge. He was definitely on the edge.
Now, David, did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
I always wanted to. I play trumpet, so I mean, yeah, I think at a very young age, at 9, when I first started playing, it came pretty easy to me, weirdly, oddly, and I just fell in love with music at a very young age. But I didn't know about being an artist. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a trumpet player.
That primary instrument is your first avenue. For me, was I was a singer. I was a tenor opera singer, and
Mhm.
studying voice is just fascinating to me, and it was my gateway into this crazy world. But it so where did you grow up?
Youngstown, Ohio. It's about 60 miles south of Cleveland, 50 miles north of Pittsburgh. Steel mill town. Yeah, that's where I grew up.
And did you do your conservatory? Did you do your studies there in the Midwest, or did you travel?
I, Actually, Youngstown State University had a really great jazz program. Tony Leonardi was the conductor, and I had a great trumpet teacher. So it only made sense that I just went to Youngstown State and I did my bachelor's degree there. But I didn't finish it. I actually left and went on the road with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra for 9 years.
What was it like joining that distinguished band?
That was the last, this was 1994, and there were still quote unquote ghost bands, the Glenn Miller Band Tommy Dorsey band, Basie band was out there, and Harry James was still doing some pickup dates. But we were traveling about 46 to 48 weeks a year, one nighters. 17 guys, runaway bus. One day we could be at Lincoln Center. The next day we're at an Elks Club in Iowa. But so that was really where I cut my teeth in the sense. Just I was 21 and no internet, no cell phones. That was the last, I think, slice era where you can kind of grow, be on those bands and learn.
I mean, were any how old were some of the members of that band? Were any no original members? I assume that would be way too late. But
Yeah, no, there was the
really,
conductor. Yeah, the conductor. There were three guys. That was the thing too. There was like the whole demographic of the band was from 21 to 75, 80 or whatever it was. So Buddy Morrow, who was the conductor, trombone player, world class trombone player, he actually recorded with Tommy Dorsey in 1939 on Rimsky-Korsakov's Song of India.
wow.
And yeah, so he was there. So it was like, and he was the conductor. It was great. At that time, he was in 94, he was 75, which I thought ancient, but now I'm ancient.
Yeah, it gets fun. Like they wasn't that old. It's funny how that works.
Right? Yeah. So, but yeah, there were a couple cats that were on the band that were played with other big bands, Harry James and Les Elgard and Ray. Basie, Glenn Miller. That kind of went through those different bands.
I still see those names touring around. Are those bands still touring? I think they're still around.
Not as much as they're not keeping the 46-week year schedule. It's basically one-offs, and they'll bring their core rhythm section or frontman, and then maybe a singer, and then they'll pick up everybody.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's the way of things these days. What was something you learned by being around these old time legends? I know for me as an opera conductor, that is the crucial part of the industry. I was around a great Verismo conductor when I was in my 20s, and I just absorbed a lot of the style and the shapings of the phrases and the sense of an Italianate style. What did you pick up from being around those great cats? That's an important part of our business, isn't it?
Would be the democracy that's in the band. I mean, you can't have any kind of riffs. So there has to be this, homogenous. There has to be this gelling. And if someone doesn't gel, then they're out. That would be one thing. But I think one of the biggest things was, the precision of playing. There was never any rehearsals. So like my audition on the band was the first night. I never got the music ahead of time. And then you get this book that looks like, it was 2000 AD, 2000 years old. And there's nothing, like you open the chart and there was like hardly anything on it because it was so faded. And then there was like a trumpet solo in the second song. And that was my audition. If I could read it, if you could get through the first night, and they wouldn't tell you like, hey, you got a solo coming up. So that was, I think the sight reading thing was one of the biggest things that I learned on the road. Like the first time you see it, it should be perfect, because that was the level of where it was.
Boy, I tell my students, I teach undergrads, I teach at a university, and I'm like, boy, your sight reading, it's so important. It's a tool that you need to have out there.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest thing. And then just, the camaraderie. And at that time, we were always like, if it was a 700-mile bus drive to the next town, we had, those times it was cassettes, we'd have splitters where we both can listen. And we would be listening to so many different things. And then just, the stories that would come from the older musicians in the band. Oh yeah, when we were here, we played this, and Buddy Rich was on the band, and Frank Sinatra, and you start hearing all these stories. And I think that's, as musicians, like even for like, I think you alluded to with Jan, something about Leonard Bernstein, that you get these stories, and that's what kind of brings everything together.
We're part of a very special continuum of time. It's like musicians and connecting to the musicians of the past is so critical to what we do.
Yeah, the tradition, the tradition and the standard, 100%. Those standards that were set, by these amazing, titans.
Now, how long did you play on that tour for?
So I did that for 3 years. Then I worked on a cruise ship for 2 years, and then went back to the Dorsey band for another 3. and then 9/11 happened. And so when 9/11 happened, we stopped touring. That was like another version of the shutdown, you know. So everything kind of just folded that whole year, and then I was kind of trapped in Youngstown, Ohio, not knowing what was going on. And so I went back to Youngstown State and finished my bachelor's degree.
All right. And was that what did you bring back to your bachelor's degree? It's always interesting when you go out on the road and actually go back to school. I think that's brings you such a different perspective.
Yeah, I only had a few classes left. I had basically less than a semester and a half to finish. Um, you know, you have a different take on real world experience and collegiality, university um, uh, repertoire, and what you're learning in the university and what you're actually learning on the road. On the road, you're trying to find a laundromat and something to eat. You know, it's like
I do. I just did talking about that. I just did a tour. I was in Italy conducting for. I was in Rome and in Tuscany, and yeah, I thought I got a great deal. I got a $500 flight. I'm like, oh, I'm living the dream here. This is wonderful. I'm saving a fortune. My luggage gets lost. My tux never came, and I had to buy like the first place that sold black pants and a black shirt. That's all I had for the week.
so yeah, actually going back to school was really easy for me because I actually wanted to be there. Um, and I saw, you know, okay, even though I was kind of killing some time, it was a great opportunity for me to finish my undergrad degree, which ultimately led me moving out here to do my master's degree
So let's
in
talk
Vegas.
about that. So you had a very eclectic master's degree. You said composition and composition and what was the rest?
Uh, Composition with emphasis in jazz studies and film score.
Oh, so that's fantastic. And what was it like to broaden your horizons like that?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved. I mean, I was an arranger. I did some writing for Tommy Dorsey Band. I wrote a few arrangements for the band. I was when I was under my undergrad. I had an emphasis in writing too, as well, composition and composing. And it really blossomed when I moved out here because I got to study with David Loeb, who's the director of jazz studies, pianists.
Mm,
Really connected in the Hollywood studios, Family Guy, and
wow.
Ben Vereen, and a lot of that. So, and then there was another guy here, two other, Joe Lano, who was Lena Horne's guitarist, and Johnny Pate, who I studied film score for. He was the staff writer for the TV series Shaft. In the So I got to study with Johnny, and so that was really awesome for me. I mean, it opened up a whole new world, and all three teachers had a different modality, different discipline. Like Joe was like straight ahead, bebop, bassy, Bach. Loeb was more contemporary, from Copeland on, and Johnny Pate was TV and film. So I learned about a lot of the older, Dimitri Tomkin and a lot of the older film TV film writers.
What a great place to be in such a place with a strong commercial music industry too, right? It must have been hugely successful and hugely like influential.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, Vegas to me is like a modern day Vienna, and they both start with V's. I mean, there's all the frivolity, delusion, illusion. you know, it's just percolating. Like here today, gone tomorrow. Like a Mozart opera. It's got 7 plays and then on to the next thing.
Yep, makes sense. And you have people like in Vienna, you had all the great composers going there, and then you had Frank Sinatra. You from every possible major act in Las Vegas, certainly, right?
Yeah, and that tradition, Sinatra and Louis, even before him, Louis Prima really defined the lounge act. And then when Sinatra saw Louis Prima, he said, "I got to do something like that." And that's when when Ocean's 11 came out, and then the Rat Pack was born. So basically, every night at the Sands, you can go see the Basie Orchestra with Sinatra, Dean, Sammy. They'd start at 1 in the morning. If
Wow,
maybe, because I know a lot of the guys that played there's a couple of guys in town that were on those gigs in the '60s.
incredible.
They're still still playing, and you hear those stories.
We've had some people on the show. We had Mike Berkowitz, who was he was around Judy Garland's Carnegie Hall show and talking about some of these like shows and some of the artists who were in the orchestra for those shows. It's just incredible.
Yeah, that's the thing about Vegas. I mean, I learned very early on, treat every check like it's your last.
I tell that to my
Because
students. That's funny. I say I conduct every concert like it's my last one, and I just get out there and do what I can and just love that moment. And
yeah, and that's not to sound negative or dark, but it's a kind of a reality check. No matter how good the show is or what it is, you can have a new GM, a new CEO come in and buy a hotel and say, you know what, I don't want the producers here anymore. I want to have some magic show or some whatever. It's the nature of the town, and it's never anything personal. It's constantly it's a little bit ephemeral is the word. It's just fleeting. These things are here today, gone tomorrow. And it's like, what happened to that show? It's gone. It's on
what are
to
some of the shows you've done that have kind of led you up to what you're doing today?
Oh, that's a good question. I was playing with mostly lead trumpet, or trumpet work with as a sideman. Gladys Knight, Natalie Cole, Donnie. I was in the Donnie Marie show for a year. Cirque du Soleil, Viva Elvis did that for a year. And then all the other, like the Frankie Avalons and stuff like that. Bobby Rydell's, anyone that came to, and I've worked with Bocelli. I've worked with pit situations or orchestra situations. Family Guy did that. Lot of shows, a lot of one-offs.
That's spectacular. And then you're around that. So, and if you, when did you start producing? When did you become a producer? When did you start putting your own projects together?
That's a great question. It's just out of necessity. I've always been this. I'd say about 2009, 2010. I was after my master's degree. I was teaching adjunct faculty at UNLV jazz studies for about 6 years, composition and jazz pedagogy, jazz improvisation, whatever was needed. And then when the housing bubble happened, I lost my adjunct position. So I was at a crossroads, and I said, "Well, what do I really want to do?" And I've always been a fan of orchestra, big band, drum and bugle corps. I've always been a fan of that. So I put together Pop Evolution, which was a 19-piece big band. But I wrote the arrangements for like playing Van Halen, Motley Crue, Foreigner, Sting. So I basically put together a pop big band. And the next thing you know, I had a year contract at the South Point Hotel was where we debuted it. And then did a year at the Stratosphere, and then we were at the Palms, and then I put together DPG Enterprises where I started creating bands. So the one that's working now the most is the Pop Strings Orchestra, which is more of the younger vibe.
What year did the Pop Strings Orchestra start out? What was the beginning of that?
2014.
Okay, great. So it's been a bit, and you've done several recordings now, right?
Yes, 2014, and it was on a whim. I mean, one of the entertainment directors for Stations Casinos Properties was looking for a lounge band, and she saw us play. I did one function at a small hotel here, and she goes, "How come you don't have that band at my hotel?" And I said, "Well, she goes, you can play in the lounge." And I thought, I'm too old to play in lounge. I don't know these songs. I mean, you're competing with DJs and, but luckily, I have the all-female string section. They're all young. The band's young, and so I put together, a show featuring all of today's music: Bruno Mars, Beyonce, Lizzo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then some older stuff, Earth, Wind and Fire and Michael Jackson, those kind of things. Dance stuff.
So what's it like taking your skills learned from the past, from the Torsi legacy, all the way into the Bruno Mars generation, to Lizzo, to all that contemporary music? What's it like bringing that tradition forward?
Yeah. So as an arranger, I mean, I don't mess too much with the song. I found if you try to get too clever and do out arrangements of things, you lose people. People just want to sing and dance to what they know. AC/DC, Shook Me All Night. So my job as the arranger is to make those parts fun to play with voicings And then in the tradition of like Tommy Dorsey or the big bands or jazz, I would open up sections for solos, but now I'd have a violin go out and shred the guitar solo.
Oh, and they
And
can do things on the violin. That's
yeah, yes, have their pedals and stuff. And I didn't use electric. I'm very purist in the sense where I wanted the acoustic instruments. Um, so that's and it became fun, and it kind of shockingly to me, it took off in a way.
And what's it like when things take off like that? I know for me, I put projects together all the time. They don't always, don't always fly. I'm always doing proposals and putting them out there and seeing what's got legs. And what's it like for you when one of these takes off?
It's number one, I'm grateful. Number two, I'm always shocked in a sense because I think some of the best things that happen are the things that we don't intend.
Isn't that the truth? I always tell young people, I'm like, you have to always be prepared and put your best foot forward and be professional, and then you have to kind of see what where life takes you, and that's like, to me, I know in my own life that's certainly the case, but it's great to hear that from somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's just a process of do the work and without any expectation. It's almost like a painting. Like if you're an artist, you paint. Is it worth something? I don't know. I'm going to move on to the next painting. I did that, and maybe it's worth nothing, or maybe it's worth millions. I don't know. But
And maybe
so
it's worth millions when you're dead. That's a problem.
right.
Poor Mozart, for example.
Yeah. So that to me, it's just do the work, and I've been lucky in the sense that it kind of took off, and we landed a residency at Caesar's Palace at the Cleopatra's Barge, which was their main little ultra lounge that was built in 1969, and Sinatra played there. So it was this tradition of us being in at Caesar's Palace at every Thursday, Friday, Saturday for 3.5 years really allowed me to figure out what works for the audience, what works with the band, and develop shows and create arrangements and try to always stay ahead of what people want.
How long is a typical performance?
2 hours straight.
2 hours straight, no intermission, no breaks.
Not for the club, not for the lounge scene. And we would start at 10:30. The other casinos we started at 11. We play 11 to 1. Caesars was a 10 to 12 because we timed it when, let's say, Sting was playing at the Coliseum. When his show let out at 9:45, people were walking down past the Cleopatra's Barge. So we timed it so we would get that overflow, or whoever, Usher or whoever was playing at the Coliseum.
And you say like a Vienna, I like that. That's like, because where else can you go see a world class, a superstar performer, and then go and see a great lounge act, and then, that's just music everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of changing now a little bit, but yeah, that's where Pop Strings, and that's the 15-piece. I would just have to say, whatever you want to do, whatever ideas you have, just do them. And because everyone's like, where are you going to put that? How are you going to afford that? Who's going to pay for that? Blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I'm going to do it and then see what happens.
And how did you get into recordings? Putting this group in the studio, what was it like in the studio when you're putting out your first recording?
Oh, it was a blast because, a lot of this like recording sessions and recording work that I do now is we don't have time to rehearse. So it's basically a studio situation where you send PDFs of the music ahead of time, maybe a MIDI file, and then you get together and you do it. This with Pop Strings was a blast because we had already been living this music for 3 years.
Oh, that's fantastic to have it all worked out like that.
Yeah, when we went into the studio, it was just a party. It was like one take done, one take done. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And has it grown your audiences? What's great about putting it out on Spotify and YouTube is that they have a global audience all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like this newest recording, well, Pop Strings I don't have on Spotify, it's on iTunes and stuff, but yeah, we have a fan base that's pretty much international now. And especially with Caesars, people from all over the country would plan their vacations for the weekend to come see Pop Strings Orchestra. it really became this thing. I was getting emails through my website. Are you guys, we'll see you this weekend. We're coming in with our friends, you know. It was really it took me by surprise, you know, how it caught on. And I just I say it with all humility, and you know, I'm humble. I try to, you know, I stay humble about it because, like, you know, I said, anything can change in a day.
That's the reality of our business, certainly. And does the roster of the musicians stay pretty consistent, or does it change frequently? I know I do a lot of contracting, and some of them stay the same, some of them change. What's it like on your in Pop Strings?
The rhythm section is pretty much the same all the time, but I do now. I have about between 70 and 100 musicians that are on our roster. But with Pop Strings, over the 3 or 4 years, we've had musicians, string players, you know, sax, whatever, singers that would come through, you know, learn the book and learn the shows. But the string players are very busy in this town, very, very busy. And I
In New
think
York too, the good ones are always working.
the biggest thing with the string players here, as opposed to when I've went and played in other cities, um, the string players here are very used to the commercial side of music. Well, they'll play, you know, they can play Beethoven or Brahms or what, you know, and then turn around and play with Prince or play, you know, it's, you have to have that kind of diversity if you want to work as a string player in town. Because full-time symphony, you want to teach something like that. But I think as a performer, the string players really, and most of them have two different axes. You know, one with a pickup that goes in direct, wireless, and all that stuff, and then one that's their baby. You know, that they play on concerts. You know.
Gotta have both those, especially in the contemporary world. Electric violin gives a lot of possibilities. You pedal effects on it, and it really is a fun new sound.
Yeah.
We've had a few electric violinists on the show in a couple of years. It's always interesting to be aware how original they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
How has your arranging style changed in the years that you've been doing this?
Oh, that's a good question. It's always a work in process. I mean, constantly. Um, there's always when you have 7 strings in the section or 6, you write differently than 40. So my thing is to learn, how do I maximize the most out of 7. I'm really not going to give them 4-part divisi harmonies, you know, very rarely. um, and you just find what works and what lays best. And you know, I'm constantly having the cellist come over. Hey, could you play this for me? Let me see how that, because I'm learning, like, oh, I see. So you need more time than the violinist on this, or you can't slur as long as the, you know. So I think from an arranging standpoint, learning the instruments, I've been getting better at what lays better on their instrument, whether it's oboe, bass clarinet, bassoon, and I'm writing more for orchestra now. You know, with
And larger ensembles. So tell us about you expand. You said for 60-piece orchestras, you've been expanding that direction.
yeah. So my newest quote unquote creation is pop symphonic, and I just released this album, 10 originals, that I started recording about 4 years ago. And it took me 4 years to do because of the 2 years down we were, you know, with the shutdown. But finally released that, and this album features 10 originals, more in the pop. It's very eclectic, very orchestral, very pops. There's a lot of jazz elements, there's funk elements, there's some rap, there's singing, um, there's just some straight orchestrations. That's really where I'm leaning now, moving forward with pop symphonic. I just love the symphony. I love the orchestra. So that's the next recording will have more of what I would call the true pops orchestra, in the sense where I will have the Bruno Mars, the Beyonce, Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, these different, you know, everything. So it's kind of a true pops symphony.
Full 60-piece ensemble or so,
Yeah.
playing with the most contemporary piece. I think that's interesting. I think that there's definitely a market for it, and I think that people would really come to see it.
Well, thank you. So basically it's a pop band that's 60-piece. So it's fun for me to write these parts. Like, I give like the Slash guitar solo on Sweet Child of Mine to the string section, and they play it. or the Joe Walsh guitar solo on Hotel California. So there's so many different things you can do with strings. I find they're the most versatile instrument. You can do anything with them. They read, they can play for all day. They never get tired.
Never get not like the brass, not like the oboe.
Not
Yeah,
like no, as a trumpet player, I'm like, I'm always as ready for brass. I know where, they have to breathe and they have the chops, and you have to know where to write for them. Strings, man, you can just give them so many different palettes. I mean, it's so awesome as an arranger. Like, what do you want them to do? You know? So we have some really outstanding soloists that go out front and just shred. It's crazy.
do you ever have like electric? You have also the rhythm section, and so you mix all that up. And I can't wait to see you guys live. That's on my docket of things to do.
Oh yeah, you have to come out. You're gonna have to come out.
Las Vegas is a
Yep.
great place to be. It's been my brother got married in Vegas about 25 years ago.
Yeah, you're gonna have to conduct it. You're gonna have to be a guest conductor on a song.
What a blast! What a blast!
Yeah.
It's so much fun. I've done more and more pops in the last 10 years. It's amazing how that's kind of grown in the industry. You're seeing that every major orchestra in the world is gravitating towards pops. They're doing the Harry Potter shows, the Star Wars, accompanying the movies, and I think that I think it's the necessity for orchestras today is to kind of cross the gap like this, not this mountaintop experience, but also to have music that's contemporary to people and direct.
Yeah, and I think the audience is just moving on, or some of them have passed and died. The demographic has moved on. Now it's our demographic in a way. That's buying the ticket, buying the cocktail, and going to a show. The people that are now in their 70s, 80s, and older, they're really not doing that anymore. And that the stigma of the orchestra, it has to be the serious, tuxedo and all of that. That I think it's just evolving into, and there's nothing less challenging about playing a John Williams score, or Hans Zimmer, or Danny Elfman,
They're hard as can be. Yep.
or Mike Horner. I mean, yeah, enjoy.
It's great music, and I think there's always, certainly there's this continuum, right? We have this, or we pay homage to the musicians of the past through what we do today. Like when you look at John Williams, excuse me, you can't not think of the planets, for example, when looking at Star Wars score, which was directly influenced by it, right? So there's always this conversation with the composers previously.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, John Williams is pulling from Beethoven, Brahms, everybody. He's really pulling all those tricks. I mean, after Beethoven, Beethoven held was on the dividing line of the from Mozart tradition, and then, obviously going forward with Romanticism and stuff like that. And then, look at Prokofiev. You look at the Russian composers, Tchaikovsky. I mean, I mean, they're pulling from all of those elements. Stravinsky, obviously, they're pulling. The movie scores are really pulling from all that. Rachmaninoff. I mean, come on.
I love showing my students how if there's a movie score you love, always like think back, but there's always kind of composers in the classical canon like Debussy and of course like Schoenberg. If you're to a horror movie, we're drawing from these styles and they're beautiful and they're constantly they're like a palette we draw from. And I think film scores, composers are always trying to evoke direct images, right? That's so important for the film score.
Have you ever tried playing a Bernard Herrmann score?
I've seen them. I've never conducted it myself, but it's gorgeous music.
From Alfred Hitchcock, that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. Or I went to a concert, what you were speaking of, where they have the movie playing, and then the orchestra is playing along with the film. Have you done that?
I've done one or two of those. Yeah, they're interesting. You have the click track, and you're just kind of jamming along. And
yeah, they did Jurassic Park here, which was pretty cool, and then actually Casablanca, which score was amazing.
What a score, huh? What a great score.
So that was really cool to see. Some of the vintage. I think and the place was sold out. 2,000 people. Smith Center here at the Smith Center here, the Reynolds Hall. So the pops, going back to your pops comment, with my pop symphonic, it's basically a true dedicated pops orchestra, where I see pops orchestras they may do one or two songs, and it doesn't sound like, authentic to me. So this way you have a full rhythm section rocking out, you know, um, and the orchestra accentuating. So it comes down to the arrangement and the singers. And like we just did a 70s classic rock show. It sold out in a week.
What were some of the charts?
Oh, we did I could pull it up. We did Baker Street. Okay, we did Year of the Cat, Springsteen, Born to Run, Firefall, Rolling Stones, Little River Band, 70s classic, Linda Ronstadt.
What's not to love?
Yeah, and then I did a James Bond theme show, 50 Years of Bond. So I find that the theme shows, people really resonate to that, and maybe that's signaling to the orchestras, like, yeah, we've got to do our serious stuff, our the real deal stuff, absolutely. But to have that facet to make it appeal to a larger demographic, and you sneak in a Brahms at one of those concerts, you sneak in a Dvorak, and then you come back to something they know, and then you sneak another, Copeland or something.
Do you actually conduct often? I know you play. You will lead from the trumpet often. You're conducting these shows?
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's like my one of my idols, Doc Severinsen.
Oh yeah.
So I really I loved watching Doc Severinsen conduct and play the trumpet, especially growing up watching the Tonight Show. That was always a great thing, Johnny Carson, and then there was the big band, Tonight Show, and Doc Severinsen. That was always very inspirational to me to watch Doc do that, and of course, all the other trumpet players I love, but yeah, I conduct.
That's wonderful, and you get to do both. And now you've taken your music with the Pop Strings Orchestra also to the L.A. Raiders, the football NFL team. How did that come together, and what's that like playing for the 65,000 people?
Yeah, it's Las Vegas Raiders. Just a typo. The Las Vegas Raiders. They're here in town. So Pop Strings Orchestra, I was contacted as one of the possible bands to audition to be the official house band for all the home games at Allegiant Stadium. So that was really put me to the test, because it kind of fell on my shoulders, in the sense that it's live TV and you have to write for live TV. So as we were talking before we went on air, if I have one song like Back in Black by AC/DC, I'll have 8 or 9 versions of that song. So it could be a 15-second cue, 35, 45, 60, 1 minute and 5, 1:15, 2 minutes, and then that's on call. So everything that I have in the on the set list has those different versions.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you have to give a cue to the orchestra so they know to go to 8B or 8A or 8C. How does
Yeah.
that work?
So we're all on in-ear monitors. We're all in in-ears. I have a talkback mic, and that's how I communicate. I really don't conduct. I mean, I just call it off. The drummer counts it. We've got and I time the BPMs. Like if I need 1 minute and 7, I may speed the song up or slow it down to fit that chunk where I really need it to be. So we're just gonna play a fast version now. And it's gonna be
What a great! There's so many challenges to doing live in the moment performances like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think, too, in the commercial arena, which is where 90% of my work is, basically, if not all of it, working with in-ear monitors, ask a string player to put in 2 in-ears in and play in tune and hear everything else mixed in that mix. I mean, people don't realize that's a whole other challenge as it is in itself, where we're required to be able to do. There's no way we could play acoustically in the stadium. You wouldn't hear it.
Impossible.
Possible. So you have everyone's in-ear monitors. So I have to have the whole orchestra in my mix dialed in, and then myself playing trumpet, and then my talkback, and the producer calling the show to me, and then I'm hearing everything else that's being called, the other cues. It's intense, but it's fun. It's great.
When
It's
did
an
you
honor.
start that gig? That's so interesting.
Last year, or not spring training, in the fall, preseason, August 2021.
Now, how many games a season is that gig for? That's wonderful.
So it's usually about 10 home games. 10 home games
How's
every
the
other
team?
week.
How's the team looking this year?
They're scuffling. They're scuffling. They only have 2 wins. They're like 2-8 or 2-7 or something.
Well,
But
yeah, it's tough. It's tough in the NFL.
they're scuffling. They were actually better last year, but they have a new coach this year, and they're just going through I think, some growing pains. They'll get it. They'll be.
At least they got a good band. We'll start there. I think it's amazing that I didn't realize they had live bands at games. I think you might be one of the only ones in the country.
We are, and especially, I mean, and it's true Vegas style. You know, when you come to an NFL game in Vegas, you know, the stadium has this amazing LED show going on. The stadium blacks out. You have this lighting. We have acts that play the halftime show, like Ludacris or John Fogerty, or it could be anybody. And then we get to play with some of the artists. So we played with Sammy Hagar from he came and played with us.
Did you get to meet him?
Yeah, he was. I wrote the arrangement. I'm texting Sammy like, "What do you think about this arrangement?" You know, he's like, "Oh," you know. So it puts. I get to be in a situation where I'm working with some really awesome, iconic entertainers.
That is an incredible experience. So what's the Red Rocker like? Give us a insight into the Sammy Hagar.
Sammy Hagar is without a doubt one of the nicest guys on the planet. Humble, and he's just a rocker, man. And he was just a pleasure to work with. And when I'm texting him back and forth, because I had to send him, I create scores using Sibelius, and I'll just extract a MIDI file of what it's going to sound like so they can hear it. And we only had like 8 minutes and 32 seconds to play the halftime show. And he sent me about 12 minutes of music. So I had to get this conversation going with him. And he was just like, "Man, just do it. Whatever you need, whatever you want, I'll be there."
Wow.
And he didn't even rehearse. He just showed up and did the gig.
That man's awesome. A vocal marvel. His voice has held up for a long time and at a high level. I really love his work. I've seen him when I was in high school twice, and I love those guys.
Well, yeah, I remember when David Lee Roth was replaced with him. That was a huge thing in the 80s, They
called it Van Hagar. My brother, I love, I'm a Van Halen fan, but my brothers grew up with Van Halen, and they're like, "You grew up with Van Hagar," but I think he's fantastic.
I lost your video, by the way. I don't know.
It's okay. You're on the screen right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so working with Sammy was incredible. Work with Dionne Warwick. Work with just recently Rachel Platten, who sings the fight song. She was just a pleasure to work with. And usually, like, when the artists come in and we're on this platform overlooking the whole stadium, and there's the 65,000 people, it's just that view's never going to get old. So when the performers come in, they're like, "Oh, this is awesome. This is So it's just a great opportunity. And then, I have to say, it all comes from the top. It comes from the owner of the Raiders, Mark Davis. He wanted, something special for his team at his stadium. And now you've got this 19-piece mini orchestra, which is this combination of like Tower of Power and, orchestra. It's just unbelievable opportunity.
Shout out to, certainly for that, their vision, but shout out to you for coming up with this concept, for growing this concept, for coming up with new ideas and being innovative in your industry. What advice do you have for some young people coming up? We have a lot of young people watch the show coming up who may want to jump into this musical world.
Mm-hmm. I think it depends. There's two paths. I think one is teaching, music, and music teaching, and the other is performance. So I can speak more to performance. If you're going into performance, number one, you better have it together as whatever you're doing, whatever your craft is. Number two, I mean, there's so many facets to a commercial musician now today. You've got to be your own social media. You've got to be your own business person. You've got to be able to play all styles. I think that's one thing, being able and never looking down or up or down at one style or another. I mean, take every gig that you can get. Take everything, because that's how you meet. or further your education. That was the best thing for me. Like, I didn't want to do a master's degree. I had no, I really did, but they offered me this scholarship and they paid me a stipend. So I figured, well, I'd kill 2 years in Vegas and move to New York, but I've been here for 18 years now. So,
Yeah,
so you-
Vegas isn't letting you go.
so when you can further your education in whatever facet, bachelor's, master's, PhD, DMA, et cetera, go for it, because you're going to meet people, you're going to be around your colleagues, and you're going to be around that energy, and you're going to meet and grow with other musicians, and that's how you go, because then that bubble, then you can go out. But the other part to me as a contractor, and this is, I think, punctuality, professionalism.
Be a good colleague. I always say that's first in my. If I write a book, it's gonna be a good colleague. Be a good, be nice.
I think, in our day and age, with the cell phone, you get the message, you get the email, you get the text, you got it. So you reply like that. I'm fanatical about that. Like, if I get a message, I reply immediately. I never say, I'll get to that later. Cause I won't. Cause like, I just won't.
Next
So
10 things pop up, right?
yeah. So, and as a conductor, I think just being, you want everyone to be prepared. Just be prepared. And that goes with learning all the styles and your professionalism. From a financial standpoint, look at the stock market, look at a retirement fund, look at investing, look at, a little far, 20 years from now, where you're going to be. Set those things in place, as create your own LLC, create your own C corp. you know there's perks creating your own business as a small business owner, whether it's credit, line of credit, taxes. It's just smart. I wish I would have done all that when I was 21, but I was on the road, and
Got to learn, right? It takes time to learn this stuff. It takes wisdom. Wisdom comes from experience. It comes from being out there, meeting other artists, and learning from by the school of hard knocks. I always say.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the best advice I can do, is just really take care of business and learn what you can learn now, because like, I'm practicing my trumpet. I'm practicing more than I've ever practiced. Like, I'm looking at stuff dated 1983, and I'm shedding it now, like going back and shedding it. Like, it never ends. And that's the great thing about our field. It's, today I'm going to listen to the Greek concerto, or today I'm going to listen to
Oh,
Basie, or today I got to read this Dizzy Gillespie book, or I got to check out this Saison thing. It's just open ended. It's just so open ended.
it's a passion. It's and you can never get lazy. You can never get bored, because it's such a for me, it's like every time I open up a new score, a new opera, I'm like, man, I've done this piece 30. I'm doing a Traviata in 2 weeks, and I've done 30. I've
Oh,
conducted 30 times, but every time I open that score and took a look, it's like looking at a picture from another angle. It's like totally different. I'm a different person. It's different cast, so you never really know, and it's that's what keeps it fresh. It's like this exciting, and you get to the energy of these great pieces.
yeah, it's timeless. It's open ended. There's always something to learn. You look at Miles Davis. If you look at the Kind of Blue album, so what? I probably listened to that about 3 billion times already, and every time I listen to it, there's something else I'm going to get out of it. It's insane.
That's what's
So
so
that
exciting about music. Always, there's so many levels and layers.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm a true music nerd for sure.
Do you have any desire to go back to the teaching eventually, or you have so much to pass on to the next generation? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm open to something in an adjunct arena. I really, my thing is just real world experience. Just doing it from starting something from grassroots and growing it from nothing. Um, I think there has to be a certain persistence and tenacity and steadfastness that has to be ingrained in you, because you're just not going to get the result that you think should happen. Like, so I think in a teaching, I'm more practical, I'm more real world. Um, if that
But
helps
you have
somebody.
so much to share. I mean, all of these things that you've done are things that, I think people need to know that. It's like, no one's going to hand this to you. You're going to have to work. Not an easy business. You're going to have to always be disciplined and be professional. And I think a lot of skills you can teach.
Oh, thank you. I mean, yeah, doing like what do you call them, master classes or clinics or something like that. I'm more just the street guy. I'm just like, ask me what you want to know, and I'll tell you. Take what you need, leave the rest. Here's what I would do. Here's what happened to me. If that helps you out at all. Um, the other thing too is, in this profession is not getting too tied up in the partying and what goes on in that thing,
That will
taking
make
care.
for a very short career in life if we look at the rock stars who died at 29.
I got into that a lot, when I was younger, in my 20s, and I feel like I wasted some time, but I had to go through that, but we're all going to go through what we need to go through, I guess. But if you can make better decisions, that always helps.
It's quite a journey, the musical journey. So, what do you have? What are some of the ideas on the? Do you have any other ideas on the back burner? Things that you're gonna, or any projects upcoming that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, definitely. Well, immediately, I do have 3 concerts coming up: January, March, May, here in Vegas. Most of the work we're doing now, either Raiders or is mostly corporate private work. We're not playing in the lounges anymore. But the biggest thing that I'm excited about is the Pop Symphonic. And I have a concert in July that I'm going to start writing for at the concert hall, where we're going to be in the big room, the quote unquote big room. And then a follow-up album, volume number 2. I already have 3 songs recorded. 2 of the songs, one is called Ode to Ludwig, and the other is called The Immortal Beloved. Kind of a nod to Beethoven, obviously.
Absolutely.
But there's a possibility of a concert in Youngstown with the Youngstown Symphony. And this is what I'm jazzed about, Jason.
Returning home, that's exciting.
So, where the cool thing about Pop Strings Orchestra, we can travel as the 13 or 14 plus me, do a high energy show, or in a smaller venue, and we can plug into any symphony. So that's the plan, where we're looking at now, is where we take this show, whether it's the James Bond show or a true pop show, and we come in with any symphony, any orchestra, and plug in, and we go.
Hope that works out. That would be really exciting because the orchestras are all looking for pops programming, and having your rhythm, your experienced rhythm section just makes it super convenient, and they can just take out their charts and.
Yeah, it's basically, so you get the Raiders house band. There's my shameless plug. The cachet of the Raiders house band, Pop Strings Orchestra. You're going to get that, with the symphony and the singers. And the unique thing, and I have to say this, I have to give a huge shout out to the orchestra members that I work with. It's not just me. I have 2 assistant, managers. The violist, I'll say her name, Crystal. She's the violist for Celine Dion. One of my violinists, like the violin players, they play with Aerosmith, Shania Twain, Rod Stewart. My bass player tours with David Foster, Andre Bocelli, Diana Ross. My drummer plays with Mark Anthony, Carlos Santana. My piano player is music director for Donny Osmond. My singer tours with Shaka Khan. My other singer, my wife Lily's, tours with Foreigner, Lou Gramm, Smokey Robinson. It's so just really lucky with this my baseball team, my football team. So I think that's the really unique thing about Las Vegas, is you have this kind of pool that it just comes together, and everyone's just a team player. Everyone's so in a way, I don't know if the word is successful, but just good in their own shoes, where we're just playing ball. We're just having fun, grooving on each other, digging what's happening. And it's really rewarding for me.
Congratulations, continued success. It's so exciting to hear the innovation of what you're doing, and all these great things are coming out of it. And I see great things to come, and please keep in touch. And we always love having people like you on Music Matters who are doing great things in the music business, and we wish you nothing but continued success.
Oh, likewise. Same to you, Jason, and everything you're doing. I'm a fan. I'm watching you. So I know we'll meet in person one day.
I can't wait. It's always great to meet artists and friends, and I can't wait to watch you work and to watch you play and conduct and meet the team.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for joining us on Music Matters. And remember, subscribe and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, keep music alive.